Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift into the fascinating world of how the mighty Chinese emperors spent their nights. Picture this. You're living in the heart of the grand forbidden city, surrounded by luxury beyond belief, while the weight of the empire rests on your shoulders. How does such a ruler manage to unwind and get some sleep? How could the most powerful people on earth ensure they woke up ready to face the challenges of their vast empire? You're probably thinking, what could be so special about bedtime for an emperor? Well, as it turns out, it was not just about slipping into bed. The emperor's nightly routine was a complex dance of ritual, luxury, and symbolism. These bedtime habits were as meticulously crafted as their political strategies. Trust me, you're in for a surprise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always fun to get to know where in the world you're tuning in from, so go ahead and post your location and local time in the comments. I'll be looking forward to it. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Sleep wasn't just a time to rest for Chinese emperors, it was a sacred practice that symbolized both power and vulnerability. You might be surprised to learn that bedtime was carefully designed to ensure the emperor remained healthy, powerful, and in control of his destiny. To them, how they slept was just as important as how they ruled. The emperor's role as the son of heaven meant they were seen as a divine intermediary between the gods and the people. Therefore, sleep was not simply rest, it was a way of aligning themselves with the celestial forces. You probably didn't know that their entire bedroom setup, from the placement of the bed to the materials used for bedding, was deeply intertwined with ancient beliefs about health, harmony, and cosmic alignment. It's almost like each sleep was an extension of their reign. Imagine stepping into the emperor's chamber. It wasn't just a place to sleep, it was a space designed to enhance well-being, prosperity, and even spiritual peace. They didn't just lay down at night, they prepared, they ritualized, and they believed that each night's sleep was as critical as the decisions they made in the day. From the materials used to create the perfect sleep environment to the intricate bedtime rituals, let's take a deep dive into how Chinese emperors managed their bedtime like true kings. Let's step deeper into the imperial court and talk about the role of rest. In the life of an emperor, where every minute was accounted for, it's easy to assume that sleep would be something to just check off the list. But for the emperors of China, it was far from a trivial matter. In fact, rest was seen as an essential part of their leadership, a vital component for maintaining their health and longevity. It wasn't just about recovering from the day's duties, it was about reinforcing their power, maintaining their connection to the divine, and preparing themselves for the enormous responsibilities of the next day. For centuries, Chinese emperors followed a carefully crafted routine when it came to rest. According to historians, it was said that the emperor's ability to sleep well was directly tied to the stability of the empire. If the emperor was well rested, the entire kingdom prospered. It wasn't just about the physical benefits of sleep, there was a deeply spiritual element at play. The emperor's rest was thought to be a reflection of cosmic harmony. In ancient China, sleep wasn't merely a biological necessity, it was intertwined with ideas of balance, power, and even fate. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. What did a typical night's rest look like in the Forbidden City? Well, first, the emperor would retire to his chamber after the day's affairs were finished, often after receiving reports from his ministers or overseeing grand ceremonies. It was a time of personal reflection, but also a time to enter into an almost sacred space. His sleeping quarters were more than just a room, they were a sanctuary designed for both physical and spiritual restoration. You might think of a simple wooden platform for sleep, but the emperor's bed was far from humble. His bed was typically raised on a platform, often draped with luxurious silks and decorated with intricate carvings. The frame was often made of the finest wood, sometimes even adorned with gold and jade. This wasn't just about comfort, it was a statement of his divine status. The bed was positioned in a place where the emperor's body could align perfectly with the cardinal directions, influenced by the ancient Chinese practice of feng shui. In feng shui, the proper alignment of one's bed was believed to encourage good health and favorable dreams, while improper placement could lead to misfortune. The emperor's bed wasn't just for rest, it was a throne of sleep that ensured he woke up in balance with the universe. But wait, there's more. It wasn't just the physical arrangement of the bed that mattered. The emperor's bedroom was a whole ecosystem of carefully chosen elements. The air had to be just right, with fresh incense wafting through the air, sometimes mixed with medicinal herbs known for their calming properties. The bedding was made of the finest silks, and they often included inner quilts filled with down feathers to ensure that the emperor remained warm but not overheated. A combination of luxury and practicality, wouldn't you say? And the sleep rituals? Well, the emperor had a whole entourage of attendants who were tasked with ensuring his peaceful rest. These attendants weren't there just for decorative purposes, they were trained in the ancient art of sleep care. They would assist the emperor in undressing and bathing before sleep, making sure that his skin was softened and his muscles relaxed, so he could rest deeply and undisturbed. The emperor's bath was a ritual in itself, often consisting of herbal mixtures that were said to calm both body and mind. Speaking of herbs, let's dive into one of the most fascinating aspects of the emperor's bedtime sleep aids. While modern-day sleep aids come in the form of pills or teas, the ancient Chinese had their own ways of ensuring a good night's rest. Some emperors were said to use specially prepared potions made from rare herbs like ginseng and licorice root, thought to replenish the body's vital energy. These potions were brewed by royal physicians, who would sometimes accompany the emperor to his bedchamber to ensure that he was in peak condition for his nightly rest. It wasn't just about physical sleep, it was about spiritual rejuvenation too. Now, let's take a step back and think about what all of this meant for the emperor. As you can imagine, sleep for a ruler wasn't just a private affair, it was a matter of statecraft. The emperor needed to rest in order to carry the weight of his empire, but his rest was also seen as a reflection of the health of the nation. Emperors often believed that if they slept poorly or had restless nights, it was a sign of disorder in the empire. Historians still argue whether the emperor's personal rest was truly tied to the state's stability, but there's no denying that the emperor's bedtime rituals were a big deal. Emperors were also expected to adhere to a strict sleep schedule. The timing of their sleep was governed by the same principles that governed their daily life. Everything had a specific time, and deviation from that could bring chaos. For instance, emperors typically retired early, often before the sun had fully set, and woke up at dawn, just as the first rays of sunlight pierced the sky. This early-to-bed, early-to-rise approach was thought to align the emperor's circadian rhythm with that of the natural world, ensuring that his energy was at its peak when he woke. But what about the emperor's dreams? Well, Chinese emperors, like many rulers, believed that their dreams held powerful messages from the divine. There was an entire protocol around interpreting dreams, and some emperors even employed dream interpreters who would come to their chambers upon waking to decode the meanings of their nighttime visions. Some emperors believed that these dreams could offer divine guidance on their rule or serve as a warning about impending danger. It's almost as if sleep and dreams were part of a larger divine strategy. Talk about taking your sleep seriously. It's also worth noting that the emperor's sleep was a deeply social experience, in a way. While the emperor slept, his concubines and wives often shared the space. However, it was a practice that varied over time. In some dynasties, the emperor's bed would be surrounded by a select few of his most trusted concubines, while in other periods, the emperor would sleep alone, his concubines only visiting him during the day. The emperor's sleep habits even affected the relationships in his harem. If he didn't sleep well, it could lead to political tensions or the shifting of allegiances among the women vying for his favor. You probably didn't think sleep could be so politically charged. Now that we've explored the emperor's bed and the sacred space around it, let's talk about something just as critical, his bedtime rituals. In the imperial court, bedtime wasn't just about crawling under the covers and drifting off into a peaceful slumber. No, it was an event. A grand spectacle of relaxation, ceremonial in nature, and designed to make the emperor feel not only rested but spiritually balanced. The rituals surrounding sleep were as detailed as the emperor's daily schedule. As evening fell, the emperor's chambers would be prepared with meticulous care. This wasn't just the work of a single servant. The palace was full of attendants, whose sole responsibility was to ensure that the emperor's sleep was as tranquil as possible. It might sound excessive, but when you're the emperor, your well-being is a matter of national importance. The bed had to be just right, the air fresh with incense, and the temperature perfect, too hot or too cold, and it could disrupt the emperor's vital energy. But the rituals didn't stop there. A special ceremonial bath was often part of the emperor's nightly routine. Royal bath attendants would prepare a warm, herbal-infused bath for the emperor, with aromatic oils meant to soothe both body and mind. The bath wasn't just for cleaning, it was a form of meditation, allowing the emperor to wash away the stresses of ruling an empire and enter a state of peaceful repose. The water used for these baths wasn't just water, it was often infused with rare herbs like ginseng, which were believed to have rejuvenating properties. In fact, ginseng was thought to not only keep the emperor physically healthy but also spiritually aligned with the cosmos. The calming properties of the bath would help ease him into the restful, almost sacred sleep he needed. Once the bath was completed, the emperor would be massaged by his personal attendants. This wasn't just a luxury, it was also a medical treatment, designed to alleviate any tension in his muscles and prepare him for a night of deep sleep. The emperor's skin, which had been softened by the bath, would now be massaged with a balm made of fragrant oils. It's said that these oils had calming effects that helped the emperor rest deeply, and they were often chosen based on the emperor's personal preferences, the season, or even his mood. In addition to this, the emperor was given a special set of night garments to wear. Unlike the elaborate robes worn during the day, these sleep garments were designed for comfort, allowing the emperor to rest without restriction. Made of the finest silks, these garments were also carefully chosen to ensure that the emperor's sleep was peaceful and undisturbed. The choice of material, color, and cut was important, as it was believed to affect the quality of his sleep. It was thought that the right sleep attire could help balance the emperor's energies and ensure a more restful night. But perhaps one of the most fascinating parts of the emperor's nightly rituals was the practice of nightly prayers. Before the emperor would lay down to sleep, he often spent time in quiet prayer, seeking guidance and favor from the gods. This prayer wasn't just a personal act of devotion, it was believed to be an essential part of maintaining the balance between the heavens and the earth. The emperor, as the son of heaven, was seen as the link between the divine and the mortal, and it was crucial that he maintained this connection through nightly rituals. During these prayers, the emperor might seek divine wisdom for the challenges ahead, or offer thanks for the successes of the day. It was a time of reflection, of spiritual renewal, and of preparation for the coming day. These nightly prayers were often done in front of a small shrine or altar within the emperor's private chamber. The altar might feature images of the emperor's ancestors, as well as symbols of divine protection, such as jade figurines or sacred scrolls. This was the emperor's way of aligning himself with the cosmos, ensuring that his reign remained harmonious with the forces of nature and the divine. As the emperor prepared to finally lie down, it was said that the attendants would then adjust his bedding. But this wasn't just about fluffing pillows and pulling up the covers, it was a carefully calculated process. The bedding was arranged so that the emperor's body was aligned with the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west, based on the principles of feng shui. This ancient Chinese practice was thought to influence everything from health to fortune, and the emperor's bed was no exception. The placement of the bed within the room was believed to play a crucial role in ensuring restful sleep and divine favor. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds a bit much, doesn't it? But in ancient China, sleep was viewed as an essential part of the emperor's health and success. If the emperor didn't sleep well, it wasn't just a personal inconvenience, it was thought to reflect poorly on his ability to rule. The empire was believed to be closely connected to the emperor's well-being, so if he had a restless night, it could be seen as a sign that something was amiss in the state. This belief in the connection between the emperor's sleep and the state's stability can still be seen in the way emperors prepared for bed. If the emperor's sleep was disturbed, it was often considered a sign of impending crisis. In some cases, the emperor would even consult his advisors or officials if he had a bad night's sleep, seeking their counsel on matters that were weighing on his mind. Historians have long debated whether the emperor's sleep was truly a reflection of the empire's stability, but the rituals surrounding it were undeniably intricate and important. The emperor's sleep was, in many ways, a sacred act. It was not just about rest, it was a ritual that helped maintain balance in the cosmos, a way to ensure that the emperor remained in good health and spiritual harmony. Each part of the bedtime routine was carefully designed to help the emperor feel spiritually connected, physically rejuvenated, and ready for whatever the next day would bring. After all, a well-rested emperor was a powerful emperor, and in a world where every move could change the fate of an empire, sleep wasn't just something to be taken for granted. As the emperor finally sank into his plush bedding, The serene atmosphere of his chamber enveloped him. The emperor's bed was more than a place to rest. It was his personal sanctuary, designed to provide not only comfort but also a sense of tranquility that extended beyond the physical realm. The fine silks, the delicate scents of incense, and the carefully arranged pillows worked together to create an atmosphere that was both calming and spiritually uplifting. But let's talk about something interesting. The emperor's bed was rarely, if ever, a solitary experience. While he may have slept alone at times, his concubines and close servants often stayed close by, though not necessarily in the same bed. The royal concubines were a crucial part of the emperor's world, and while they weren't always present during his sleep, their proximity to him at night symbolized their relationship and their roles in the emperor's life. This was especially true during certain periods when the emperor's health and well-being were at stake. For example, some emperors were known to have concubines sleep in their chambers to help guard against spiritual disturbances, believed to disrupt the emperor's sleep. The emperor's sleep was also influenced by a custom that you might not expect: astrology. You might assume that the emperor's daily life was governed by astrology, but what about his sleep? Well, astrology played a role in determining the best nights for the emperor to sleep soundly, as well as the times of year that were most auspicious for his rest. In fact, certain months of the year were considered more favorable for sleep, and these times were seen as essential for ensuring that the emperor remained connected to the divine. Astrological advisors, also known as court astrologers, were often consulted to determine when it was best for the emperor to sleep, when to rest more deeply, and when to wake up at the precise time to ensure his day started with harmony. It was believed that this careful alignment of rest with celestial movements would keep the emperor in tune with the universe, preventing misfortune or turmoil in the empire. While this practice may seem a bit mystical, for the emperor and his court, it was a natural part of their routine. This attention to detail wasn't just limited to the emperor's personal space. Every aspect of his sleep was interconnected with the larger ceremonial practices of the court. The emperor's resting hours were also carefully scheduled to ensure that they didn't interfere with important state matters, such as formal ceremonies or diplomatic meetings. After all, as the Son of Heaven, the emperor was responsible for maintaining balance not just within his own life but in the world around him. Every aspect of his existence, including sleep, was closely monitored to ensure that his connection to the divine and the natural world remained intact. Another fascinating detail about the emperor's bedtime was the idea of dreams and their importance in Chinese culture. You see, it wasn't just about how the emperor slept, it was about what he dreamt. As with many cultures, dreams were believed to have deep spiritual significance. In the case of the Chinese emperor, dreams were often considered a form of divine communication. Court astrologers and advisors would be summoned to interpret the emperor's dreams, looking for signs and omens that could provide guidance for the empire. Certain dreams were seen as auspicious, signaling that the emperor's reign would be prosperous and harmonious. Other dreams, particularly those involving ominous figures or disturbing imagery, were believed to be warnings, indicating that something was wrong in the emperor's spiritual or political life. These interpretations weren't just for the emperor's personal benefit, they were also viewed as important for the nation's future. Interestingly, the emperor's dreams weren't always private matters. At times, certain dreams would be shared with the court, with officials and courtiers offering their interpretations. The emperor's dreams, thus, became a source of both personal reflection and public discourse. It's even said that during certain dynasties, the emperor would use his dreams to decide political matters, from military strategies to royal appointments. If the emperor dreamt of a particularly disturbing image, the court would take action immediately, attempting to correct whatever misfortune was indicated by the dream. Now, you might be wondering, what about the emperor's actual physical health? You can imagine that the emperor's health was closely tied to his ability to sleep well, which is why traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, played a significant role in ensuring his rest. In ancient China, sleep disorders were often treated with herbal remedies, acupuncture, and even specialized massages designed to help the emperor relax. These methods were grounded in TCM principles, which viewed health as a balance of energies. Sleep, in this context, wasn't just about recuperation, it was seen as a fundamental pillar of maintaining balance and harmony in the body. Herbal remedies were a major part of the emperor's bedtime rituals. Many of the herbs used in his remedies were rare and costly, often brought to the court from far-flung regions of the empire. Ginseng, for example, was believed to not only boost energy but also calm the mind, ensuring a peaceful night's rest. Licorice root, another common herb, was used to soothe the digestive system, which was essential for ensuring that the emperor didn't suffer from indigestion during the night. These herbs were either ingested as teas or added to his bath to create a deeply relaxing atmosphere. Acupuncture, a practice still prevalent today, was also used by the emperor to relieve tension and enhance the quality of his sleep. Special acupuncturists were appointed to the royal court, and they would treat the emperor with a series of acupuncture sessions meant to regulate his body's energy and ensure that his sleep was deep and restorative. This treatment was not just for physical relaxation, it was meant to promote spiritual and emotional healing, keeping the emperor in peak condition for his duties. Finally, let's not forget the role of music and sounds in the emperor's sleep. The sounds of a court orchestra playing soft, relaxing melodies might seem like a luxury, but for the emperor, it was an essential part of winding down. Music played during bedtime was intended to calm the mind and bring the emperor into a meditative state. Instruments like the guqin, a 7-stringed zither, and the pipa, a pear-shaped lute, were often played softly, creating a soothing ambiance that helped the emperor relax before sleep. But the emperor's sleep wasn't just a luxurious retreat from the world, it was a vital part of his leadership. The quality of his sleep was believed to affect his ability to make decisions, handle crises, and lead with wisdom. And when he awoke, he did so with a fresh mind, ready to take on the challenges of the day. His sleep, in essence, became a foundation for the strength of the empire. As the night deepened and the emperor slipped into a peaceful slumber, the role of his dreams and the deeper spiritual connections he formed during sleep took center stage. It wasn't simply the quality of sleep that mattered, but how the emperor's state of rest influenced his decisions and, ultimately, the fate of the empire. You might wonder, how did this concept of sleep affect the leadership of such a powerful ruler? Well, it turns out that sleep wasn't only about physical rest, it was also deeply tied to the emperor's political prowess, his ability to connect with the divine, and his role as the celestial bridge between heaven and earth. During certain dynasties, the emperor's dreams were not merely personal experiences, but public matters. The imperial dream interpreters played a critical role in deciphering the meaning of any disturbing or prophetic visions the emperor had. These advisors, often esteemed scholars and philosophers, would gather immediately to provide insight into the emperor's dreams, interpreting them as omens or messages from the divine. For the emperor, a dream wasn't just a fleeting event, it was a powerful form of communication that could guide his decisions and actions. For example, an emperor who dreamt of falling or being surrounded by darkness might interpret this as a sign of impending danger or political unrest. On the other hand, a dream filled with light, celestial figures, or flowing rivers could be seen as a sign of prosperity and divine favor. The importance of these dreams was such that they could change the course of imperial policy or military strategy. If the emperor had a particularly vivid dream, the courtiers might even consult oracles or make offerings to ensure that the dream's message was understood and acted upon. It was a fascinating mixture of spirituality, governance, and sleep rituals that governed the emperor's life. But what about the emperor's health and overall well-being? As we've seen, sleep wasn't just for the emperor's personal benefit, it was intricately tied to his physical and mental state, which had an immediate effect on his ability to rule. In ancient China, it was widely believed that a ruler's health mirrored the condition of the empire. If the emperor was physically unwell, it was thought that the empire itself would fall into disarray. For this reason, the emperor's health was a matter of great concern for the royal physicians, who would design sleep schedules and routines specifically to ensure that the emperor remained strong, clear-headed, and capable of governing with wisdom. Chinese medicine, especially acupuncture and herbal remedies, was often used to treat sleep disturbances or insomnia. Imagine this: the emperor, lying in his bed surrounded by luxury and servants, was being cared for not just by his physicians but by his entire court, all of whom were tasked with ensuring that the emperor's sleep was uninterrupted and restorative. For the emperor, a restful night meant waking up with the energy to lead, to listen to his advisors, to make decisions, and ultimately to influence the fate of an entire nation. This idea of the emperor's sleep affecting his rule was not just a matter of physical health, it was deeply spiritual. As the son of heaven, the emperor was considered the earthly representative of the divine. Therefore, his state of mind and body was believed to be intrinsically linked to the health and success of the nation. If the emperor was well rested, it was thought to be a sign of divine favor. Conversely, if the emperor had difficulty sleeping, it was seen as an omen of instability or disruption in the heavens, signaling that something was wrong in the political or social fabric of the empire. This belief extended to the emperor's ability to connect with his ancestors and the gods during sleep. After all, sleep, in the context of Chinese tradition, was often considered a time when the soul could wander freely and commune with higher realms. During sleep, the emperor was thought to receive guidance from the divine, ensuring that his rule remained in alignment with cosmic forces. It was a fascinating blend of spiritual belief and political reality that elevated the emperor's sleep from a mundane necessity to a critical, sacred act. And let's not forget the role of the emperor's attendants. The presence of his servants during sleep wasn't simply about fulfilling a practical need, it was also a way of maintaining the imperial aura. The emperor's servants were often trained in ancient healing practices and would play a crucial role in the emperor's sleep ritual. They would ensure that the emperor was comfortable and well positioned in bed, providing the necessary herbs and remedies to enhance sleep. These attendants weren't just passive figures, they were part of a larger system of care that reinforced the emperor's importance and the sacredness of his role. At times, the emperor's servants would also participate in sleep rituals that went beyond physical comfort. Certain rituals involved chanting, prayers, or even the playing of soft music to help ease the emperor into a deep, restful sleep. It was believed that these soothing sounds and calming words could guide the emperor's mind into a peaceful state, one that allowed him to connect with the divine and receive insight for his rule. These rituals reflected a broader cultural belief in the power of sound and words to influence the mind, especially during the vulnerable state of sleep. But, of course, not all sleep was serene for the emperor. There were times when sleep would become elusive. Perhaps it was a troubling dream or an unresolved political issue that weighed on his mind. When this happened, the emperor's physicians and spiritual advisors were called upon to assist him in reclaiming his peace of mind. Herbal teas, acupuncture, and meditation techniques were all employed to restore the emperor's balance. The emperor, after all, was not just a ruler, he was a symbol of the empire's strength, and his sleep was a reflection of that power. In the grand scheme of things, the emperor's bedtime rituals were far more than just a set of physical habits. They were deeply intertwined with the fabric of his rule. Every element of his sleep routine was designed to keep him physically, mentally, and spiritually aligned with the universe. His ability to sleep well, to rest deeply, and to wake up refreshed was seen as a sign of his divine mandate. If the emperor slept well, it was believed that the empire would prosper. But if the emperor's sleep was disturbed, it could signal trouble on the horizon. As we close this chapter on the bedtime rituals of Chinese emperors, think about the delicate balance that governed their lives. Sleep was not just a personal necessity, it was an imperial duty, a sacred practice that ensured their health, their leadership, and the success of their empire. Each night, as the emperor lay in his bed, he was not just resting. He was preparing for another day of leadership, another day of divine connection, and another day of ruling over a nation that believed in the power of his rest. By now, you're probably getting a sense of how seriously Chinese emperors took their sleep, almost as seriously as their responsibilities. It wasn't just about lying down after a long day. No, sleep was a sacred part of the emperor's routine, essential for maintaining his health, his divine connection, and the empire's overall prosperity. But what about the actual place where all of this magic happened? Let's dive into the design of the emperor's bedroom, which was as crucial to his nightly rituals as the spiritual practices and physical treatments we've discussed. The emperor's bedchamber wasn't just a private space, it was a carefully crafted environment designed to ensure that the emperor's sleep was uninterrupted and spiritually enriching. Everything in the room, from the bed itself to the furniture surrounding it, had been placed with precision and intention. The emperor's bed wasn't just a place to sleep, it was a throne for his spirit, a platform where he could connect with the divine while his body rested. The bed itself was always positioned with great care. The placement was not haphazard, but instead followed ancient principles of feng shui, the Chinese art of harmonizing with the environment. Feng Shui dictates that the bed must be aligned with specific elements of nature, ensuring that the emperor's personal energy was in balance with the cosmic forces around him. If the bed was positioned incorrectly, it was believed that the emperor's sleep and, by extension, his rule could be disturbed. In fact, the emperor's bed was often placed so that he faced a specific direction, as certain directions were considered more auspicious than others for good sleep and well-being. The materials of the bed were just as important as the position. The emperor's bed was often made of the finest wood, such as sandalwood, known for its fragrant properties, which were thought to purify the air and promote restful sleep. The mattress, on the other hand, was usually filled with a mixture of soft materials, silk, cotton, and sometimes even feathers or down, ensuring the emperor's comfort throughout the night. But the real luxury lay in the bedding itself. The emperor's sheets, blankets, and pillows were often made of the finest silk, embroidered with intricate patterns, symbolizing good fortune and protection. These luxurious fabrics were more than just for comfort. They were seen as an extension of the emperor's status and divine connection. One particularly fascinating aspect of the emperor's bedchamber was its decor. The room was often adorned with symbols of protection and good fortune. Jade figurines, often depicting mythological creatures like dragons and phoenixes, were placed around the room to ward off evil spirits and ensure that the emperor's sleep remained undisturbed. The use of jade was not just decorative, it was symbolic of the emperor's connection to the divine. Jade was considered the most precious material in Chinese culture, believed to have the power to protect the emperor and bring him blessings. The emperor's bedroom wasn't simply a restful retreat, either it was a place of reflection and connection with his ancestors. An altar, or small shrine, often located in the far corner of the room, was used for nightly prayers. At the end of each day, the emperor would offer incense to his ancestors, honoring their spirits and seeking their guidance. This ritual wasn't just a formality, it was a deeply spiritual practice, designed to maintain the emperor's connection to the celestial forces that governed both his life and the empire. It was believed that through this connection, the emperor could receive divine wisdom and blessings that would aid him in ruling with righteousness and strength. The room itself was also a place of quiet contemplation, designed to foster peace and reflection. The emperor's attendants would ensure that the room was free of any distractions. The use of incense, as mentioned, was part of this. Scents like sandalwood, jasmine, and lotus were often burned in the room to create a soothing, tranquil atmosphere. This sensory environment wasn't just about relaxation, it was about maintaining spiritual purity. The smell of incense was believed to help clear the mind and prepare the emperor for a restful, spiritually aligned sleep. It was also said that the scent of incense could help the emperor connect with his ancestors and the divine. The room itself was also incredibly quiet. Emperors were often very particular about the sounds around them. The slightest disturbance could disrupt their rest, so the use of sound in the emperor's chamber was minimal. Often, the only sounds heard were the soft rustling of silk sheets or the distant sound of servants tending to their tasks. Silence was considered a virtue, a necessary condition for the emperor to maintain his divine connection and to ensure that his sleep was undisturbed. Now, we all know how important good sleep is to our own mental clarity and emotional well-being. But for the emperor, it wasn't just about personal health, it was about maintaining order in the entire empire. The emperor's sleep was seen as a reflection of the balance between heaven and earth, and any disturbance in his sleep could be seen as a sign of impending turmoil. There were even records of emperors turning to their spiritual advisors if they experienced restless nights, seeking guidance on how to restore their connection to the divine and maintain harmony within their realm. One fascinating aspect of the emperor's bedroom, particularly during certain dynasties, was the way that concubines played a role in the emperor's sleep environment. While the emperor often slept alone, his concubines were a significant part of the royal court. Depending on the emperor's health and spiritual needs, concubines would sometimes be called upon to stay in the room, providing companionship and offering spiritual support. The emperor's concubines were often highly trained in the arts of relaxation and spiritual alignment, ensuring that their presence would only enhance the emperor's connection to the divine during sleep. There were also times when concubines would perform ceremonial dances or sing lullabies to soothe the emperor's mind before sleep. These performances were not just for entertainment, they were a form of spiritual offering, believed to calm the emperor and help him enter a restful state. Music, too, played a significant role in creating the right atmosphere. The gentle strumming of the guqin or the soft plucking of the pipa could fill the room with harmonious sounds, adding to the peaceful ambiance that surrounded the emperor as he fell asleep. The emperor's sleep was a delicate balance of physical luxury, spiritual rituals, and political significance, but it was also deeply personal. For the emperor, each night's rest was more than just a way to recover. It was an essential part of his spiritual practice, a way to stay connected to the divine and remain in harmony with the universe. His bed, his chamber, and his sleep rituals were all carefully crafted to support not just his body, but his mind and spirit as well. We've spent quite a bit of time discussing the finer points of the emperor's sleep setup, his bed, his room, the rituals that surrounded his nightly rest. But now, let's take a look at the deeper meaning behind all these elaborate practices. Why did the emperor's sleep hold such importance in the larger picture of imperial rule? What made his bedtime rituals a reflection of not just personal well-being, but the very fate of his empire? In ancient China, the emperor wasn't just a ruler in a political sense. He was the son of heaven. This meant that he was seen as the living link between the divine realm and the earthly world. His actions, whether in the court, on the battlefield, or during his personal rituals, were believed to influence the cosmic order itself. It wasn't just about managing an empire. It was about maintaining balance with the heavens, ensuring harmony in the world by aligning himself with the natural and spiritual forces that governed everything. Sleep, then, was not merely a mundane necessity. For the emperor, it was a deeply spiritual act, one that required perfect alignment with the cosmos. How he slept was seen as an extension of how he governed. A well-rested emperor was thought to be in perfect balance with the forces of nature, able to make wise and just decisions. But if his sleep was disturbed, whether due to illness, political unrest, or spiritual imbalance, it was believed that this could affect his ability to rule effectively, causing instability within the empire. In a very real sense, the emperor's sleep was tied to the health and stability of the nation. Historically, there were times when the emperor's restless nights were interpreted as a sign of impending disaster. For example, if the emperor had a particularly troubling dream, it could be seen as an omen that something was wrong within the empire. It wasn't just a bad dream, it was a divine warning. This belief was so ingrained in the culture that any signs of disturbance in the emperor's sleep could lead to immediate consultations with spiritual advisors, court physicians, and even astrologers. The emperor's advisors would attempt to interpret these omens and take steps to remedy whatever spiritual or political imbalance had caused the disturbance. If the emperor's sleep was poor, action was taken swiftly to restore harmony. Think about it. Imagine if the emperor had a restless night right before a major political decision. If he didn't get a good night's rest, it wasn't just him who was affected, it was the entire empire. A wise ruler had to be alert, clear-headed, and connected to the divine order at all times. His sleep, therefore, was seen as an essential element in ensuring the prosperity of his kingdom. This connection between the emperor's well-being and the state's stability underscores the importance of sleep in the imperial context. But it wasn't just the emperor who felt the weight of this spiritual connection. The entire court, including his ministers, advisors, and concubines, played a role in maintaining the emperor's sleep. These attendants weren't merely passive observers, they were active participants in the emperor's spiritual practice. Many of the rituals surrounding his bedtime, such as the music, incense, and prayer, were designed to help align the emperor's body and spirit, ensuring that he was in a peaceful state before he closed his eyes. The emperor's personal health, then, was a matter of collective responsibility. His servants, physicians, and even his concubines were expected to maintain his well-being, knowing that his physical and spiritual health were directly tied to the empire's prosperity. If the emperor wasn't sleeping well, it could signal that something was wrong, not just in his own body, but in the realm as a whole. For this reason, the emperor's bedchamber was considered a sacred space, where the balance of power and peace was maintained each night. The bed wasn't just a place to sleep, it was a place where the emperor reconnected with his divine mandate, ensuring that he woke up in perfect harmony with the world around him. In fact, there was even a belief that the emperor's sleep directly influenced the weather, agriculture, and the overall prosperity of the empire. If the emperor slept soundly and peacefully, it was believed that the heavens would smile upon the earth, bringing good harvests, fair weather, and stability. But if the emperor's sleep was troubled, it was thought that the empire would suffer. This idea of the emperor as the divine link between heaven and earth was so strong that his nightly rituals were seen as a form of spiritual maintenance for the entire nation. But, as we all know, no ruler is perfect. Even the emperor had his moments of restlessness, and it wasn't unusual for emperors to seek guidance during times of spiritual disquiet. It's fascinating to note that some emperors even turned to astrology, using the stars and celestial bodies to determine the best nights for rest and recovery. Astrology, deeply ingrained in Chinese culture, played a role in the emperor's personal care. Astrologers would study the stars to determine when the emperor's sleep would be most restorative and when it was best for him to take action. This belief that the alignment of the stars could influence the emperor's health, and, by extension, his rule was an integral part of the imperial sleep ritual. Some emperors, particularly those who struggled with insomnia or restless nights, would consult their spiritual advisors, who would often perform rituals to help calm their minds and restore their balance. There are stories of emperors who, feeling the weight of the empire upon their shoulders, found it difficult to fall asleep. These rulers would often resort to various forms of therapy, such as acupuncture or herbal remedies, to promote relaxation and sleep. In extreme cases, they would even ask for special prayers to be offered in their chambers, seeking divine intervention to help them rest peacefully. This dependence on spiritual and physical remedies highlights just how important the emperor's sleep was to the functioning of the empire. Sleep wasn't just about resting the body, it was about maintaining a balance with the divine, ensuring that the emperor's decisions were wise and his reign just. The emperor's sleep rituals were a reflection of his commitment to ensuring the health and prosperity of his people. They were a necessary part of his role as a leader, one that was deeply intertwined with his spiritual and political duties. In the end, the emperor's sleep was much more than a private, mundane affair. It was a sacred, ceremonial event, one that required careful attention and respect. The emperor's bed, his chamber, and his nightly rituals were designed not just to ensure his personal comfort, but to guarantee that he remained connected to the divine forces that shaped his rule. His sleep was a critical part of his reign, and through these nightly rituals, the emperor maintained the balance and stability of his empire. Now, we've seen how essential the emperor's sleep was to his well-being, both physically and spiritually, and how it affected the empire. But what about the role of his dreams? Dreams were not just personal experiences for the emperor. They were deeply intertwined with the political and spiritual landscape of the empire. In the world of Chinese emperors, dreams weren't just random thoughts during the night. They were thought to be a direct communication from the gods, a way for the divine to provide guidance or warnings. Dreams, in this sense, became a tool of leadership. Emperors often sought dream interpretations from a team of court officials and spiritual advisors. The importance of dreams was so significant that dream interpreters became one of the most coveted positions within the royal court. These interpreters were highly trained in understanding symbols, omens, and visions. They had to be familiar with a variety of cultural and spiritual references, from astrology to ancient texts, in order to decipher the emperor's dreams accurately. And these interpretations weren't just for the emperor's personal insight, they had profound implications for how the emperor would rule in the coming days. Imagine an emperor waking up from a vivid dream of a storm approaching, or of being chased by ominous shadows. For most people, such dreams might be shrugged off as a result of stress or a late-night meal. But for the emperor, these dreams were powerful omens. Court officials would gather around to interpret the meaning. A storm in the dream could be seen as a sign of political unrest or a coming military conflict. Similarly, being pursued by shadows could indicate the emperor's own insecurities or struggles with his leadership, and it might prompt him to make changes to his policies or approach. The emperor would act on these interpretations, as dreams were believed to offer a glimpse into the future or reveal hidden truths. Dreams weren't just about personal guidance, they were also seen as a reflection of the emperor's alignment with the cosmos. For example, a dream in which the emperor is receiving gifts or blessings could indicate that the heavens were pleased with his reign. A dream involving ancestral figures or divine symbols might be viewed as a sign that the emperor's connection to the past was strong, reinforcing his position as the legitimate ruler. On the other hand, dreams that were dark, chaotic, or disturbing were seen as signs of imbalance, and action would be taken to correct that imbalance, whether through rituals, prayers, or shifts in leadership. The emperor's dreams were also linked to his health. If an emperor consistently had disturbing or unsettling dreams, it was thought to be a sign of illness, whether physical or spiritual. Some emperors, especially those suffering from anxiety or other health issues, were known to have troubled sleep, which often manifested in vivid and troubling dreams. These troubled nights could signal to the court that the emperor was in need of spiritual or physical healing, and so remedies would be sought ranging from herbal potions to spiritual cleansing rituals, all designed to restore the emperor's harmony and health. And let's not forget the role of divine intervention in the emperor's dreams. Some emperors believed that their dreams were direct messages from the gods or from their ancestors. These messages could guide the emperor in making important decisions or even inspire his military strategies. The emperor might dream of a great battle, and the next day, his military advisors would take that dream into account, preparing for an upcoming conflict. It wasn't just superstition, it was deeply embedded in the way the emperor connected with the divine realm. For example, during certain times of crisis or great change, an emperor might experience dreams that were interpreted as divine messages about the empire's future. These messages, though symbolic, were taken seriously and could even lead to political or military shifts. If an emperor dreamt of a great flood, the court would often interpret it as a sign of impending disaster, prompting immediate action to prevent or mitigate a crisis. This belief in the power of dreams to shape political decisions highlights the spiritual role of the emperor. His leadership wasn't just a matter of military strategy or diplomacy, it was also about maintaining divine favor through the interpretation of dreams. Now, let's pause and reflect on the emperor's role in the empire during times of sleep and dream interpretation. While he might have been physically asleep in his chamber, his mind was far from idle. The emperor's dreams, whether peaceful or disturbing, were a direct reflection of the state of the empire. His spiritual connection to the heavens and to his ancestors was maintained through these nightly rituals, and his dreams were seen as a bridge between the human and divine realms. The emperor's ability to interpret and act on these dreams was essential to his leadership. It wasn't just about his personal well-being, it was about the future of the entire empire. The influence of dreams on the emperor's decisions extends beyond his personal life and into the lives of his subjects. When the emperor made decisions based on his dreams, they had ripple effects throughout the empire. For instance, a dream might prompt the emperor to enact new laws or make alliances with neighboring kingdoms. His dreams could even affect the way he governed on a day-to-day basis, whether it was through economic policies, military strategies, or the way he interacted with his court officials. In many ways, the emperor's connection to his dreams served as a reminder of his unique role in the world. He wasn't just a man, he was a ruler chosen by the heavens, and his dreams were a manifestation of that divine connection. His dreams, in essence, were a form of guidance, a way for the divine to communicate with him and ensure that he was fulfilling his role as the Son of Heaven. His ability to interpret and act on these dreams was essential to maintaining harmony and prosperity within the empire. Now, imagine the weight of it all: the emperor, lying in his bed, surrounded by his attendants, deeply connected to the divine through his dreams. It wasn't just sleep, it was a sacred time, one that allowed the emperor to recharge, to connect with the cosmos, and to receive guidance from the heavens. The emperor's sleep wasn't just for rest, it was for spiritual renewal, a crucial part of his role as ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the world. As we delve deeper into the nightly rituals of Chinese emperors, it's important to recognize that these routines were not just about ensuring restful sleep or a connection with the divine. They also served a practical purpose by ensuring that the emperor was well rested. He could lead more effectively, make sound decisions, and preserve the stability of his empire. The emperor's daily life was filled with demands: managing court officials, overseeing military campaigns, handling diplomacy, and maintaining a complex bureaucratic system. Without a solid foundation of rest and relaxation, the emperor's leadership could falter, and that was a risk that could not be taken lightly. But, as we've seen, the emperor's sleep was far from simple. It was steeped in symbolism, tradition, and spirituality. The very act of sleeping, especially within the emperor's sacred chamber, was part of a much larger ritual that ensured the smooth operation of the imperial court and the empire itself. And perhaps no aspect of the emperor's bedtime was as meaningful as the role played by the emperor's concubines and closest attendants. These individuals weren't just there to provide companionship or to tend to the emperor's physical needs, they were also part of the spiritual system that surrounded his nightly rest. The emperor's concubines, particularly those who were closest to him, had a significant role to play in his bedtime routine. Their presence was not merely a matter of personal comfort. In many cases, the concubines served as spiritual companions, tasked with maintaining an aura of calmness and tranquility in the emperor's chamber. Some were trained in spiritual practices, including meditation and prayer, and would perform rituals designed to ensure the emperor's rest was undisturbed. Others were believed to have special spiritual qualities, able to help restore balance to the emperor's body and soul through their presence. In addition to the spiritual practices, there were times when concubines would participate in physical rituals to aid the emperor's sleep. For instance, they might perform soothing music or recite prayers aloud, creating a calming atmosphere for the emperor to rest in. It was thought that the gentle sound of a concubine's voice or the soft strains of music would help align the emperor's energies with the cosmos, ensuring that his dreams were peaceful and his sleep restorative. This wasn't just a luxury, it was seen as an essential part of the emperor's nightly preparation for the tasks that awaited him the next day. In the more intimate aspects of the emperor's life, the concubines' roles were as much about spiritual balance as they were about personal companionship. Their presence, whether at the emperor's side or in the larger imperial household, was seen as essential to maintaining the emperor's connection to the divine. Each concubine had her place in the court and in the emperor's life, and their positions were as much about duty as they were about personal connection. The emperor's relationship with his concubines was, in many ways, a reflection of his ability to maintain balance and harmony in his personal and political life. Interestingly, though, the emperor's relationship with his concubines was not always a simple one. There were times when the emperor might feel burdened by the responsibilities of his harem. At certain points in history, emperors struggled to maintain harmony among their concubines, as the political and personal rivalries among them could sometimes cause disruption in the emperor's life. It's fascinating to note that during these times of internal court conflict, the emperor's sleep would often suffer. When the emperor's concubines were at odds, it was believed that the emperor's spiritual and physical balance was thrown off, leading to restlessness and even insomnia. The emperor's sleep, then, was not just a reflection of his personal well-being, but also of the political stability within his court. This connection between the emperor's internal world and the external world of the court was a central theme throughout his life. If the emperor's sleep was disrupted, it was seen as a sign that something was wrong in the empire, whether it was within the court, among the military, or in the political landscape. The emperor's well-being was seen as a reflection of the well-being of the entire nation, and the careful maintenance of his sleep rituals was an important part of ensuring the prosperity and stability of China. But what happens when an emperor's sleep doesn't go as planned? What happens if there's a disturbance or a night filled with restlessness? Well, it turns out that this too was part of the emperor's spiritual and political life. If the emperor had trouble sleeping, there were various remedies and interventions available. The emperor's personal physicians would be summoned to diagnose the issue, often offering herbal teas or medicinal preparations to promote relaxation. Acupuncture, too, was a common treatment for insomnia or sleep disruptions, with royal physicians using ancient techniques to help the emperor restore his energy and balance. It wasn't just the physical treatments that mattered, though. If the emperor experienced a particularly troubling night, spiritual advisors and astrologers would also be called upon to provide guidance. These advisors, trained in the mystical arts of astrology, dream interpretation, and ritual, would analyze the situation and offer insight into the deeper spiritual causes of the emperor's unrest. In some cases, it was believed that the emperor's sleep disturbances were the result of cosmic imbalances or spiritual misalignment. If this was the case, special rituals and offerings would be performed to restore balance and ensure that the emperor would rest peacefully once again. The emperor's sleep rituals were a perfect example of how intertwined the personal and political aspects of life could be for China's rulers. The emperor wasn't just a political figurehead. He was a spiritual leader, a divine intermediary between the heavens and the earth. His sleep wasn't just about personal rest. It was about maintaining cosmic harmony, ensuring the success of the empire, and keeping the divine forces in balance. And with that balance, the emperor would awaken, ready to face the day's challenges. When he slept well, he woke with clarity, energy, and wisdom. And when he didn't, the weight of the empire was felt not just by him but by everyone in his domain. It's no wonder that so much attention was paid to his sleep habits. As we've now seen, the emperor's sleep was a critical part of his rule, blending luxury, spirituality, and practicality in a way that maintained the balance of the empire. But let's zoom out a bit and take a look at the broader implications of these nighttime rituals. While the emperor's bedtime was certainly luxurious, it was also highly symbolic. His sleep habits were not only a personal matter, they were a public statement. Every night, as the emperor rested, the stability and prosperity of the empire rested with him. The emperor was, after all, the son of heaven, a living bridge between the celestial and earthly realms. His sleep, therefore, was seen as a reflection of his cosmic alignment. If his sleep was peaceful, it was thought that the empire was in harmony. If it was troubled, it was a sign that something in the empire needed attention. This connection between the emperor's personal rest and the state of the empire was a key part of how the Chinese saw the emperor's role. His health, both physical and spiritual, was intrinsically linked to the well-being of the entire nation. In a very real sense, the emperor's sleep was a form of statecraft. It was a way of maintaining control over the natural and supernatural forces that influenced the world around him. And while the emperor's sleep was clearly a private affair, it was also an affair of state. Every disruption in the emperor's rest could signal a disruption in the empire itself. But what happened when the emperor was truly out of sync, when his sleep was troubled for days on end, when the celestial harmony was lost? Well, this led to an incredibly fascinating aspect of imperial life, the rituals of intervention. These interventions weren't just about physical remedies. Yes, the emperor would be attended to by his royal physicians, who would offer various herbal concoctions and medical treatments. But more than that, the emperor would call upon spiritual advisors, astrologers, and even religious leaders to help restore his balance. Astrologers would read the stars and interpret the omens. Was the emperor's trouble sleeping a result of unfavorable celestial alignments? Was the divine order out of place? These readings were taken seriously, and the emperor would make adjustments accordingly. Perhaps certain public appearances or military campaigns would be postponed until the alignment of the stars was more favorable. The emperor's personal unrest was never viewed as an isolated issue. It was seen as something that had to be addressed in relation to the greater cosmic order. Spiritual intervention also played a significant role. Religious leaders would perform rituals, offering prayers to the gods and seeking blessings to ensure that the emperor's spiritual health was restored. Sometimes, the emperor would perform these rituals himself, in an act of devotion that was meant to re-establish his connection with the divine. Whether through incense offerings, the recitation of sacred texts, or the performance of specific rituals, the emperor would attempt to restore the balance that had been lost. It's almost as though the emperor's sleep was a living, breathing entity. His dreams were not just personal, but intertwined with the world around him. The emperor's dreams could be used to shape policy, influence military strategy, and guide decisions in the imperial court. In a world where spiritual beliefs were so deeply ingrained in daily life, the emperor's sleep habits were taken as seriously as his public duties. But what happened when the emperor awoke? After a night of spiritual renewal, a calming bath, and perhaps some herbal medicine, the emperor would rise from his bed, ready to face the new day. And with each morning, he would begin the cycle anew. His sleep wasn't just a break from the world, it was a renewal, a constant process of connecting with the divine, realigning with the natural world, and preparing to govern the empire. When the emperor woke up rested, his decisions were clear and sharp, his mind open to the guidance of the divine. It wasn't just about the physical act of sleeping, it was about entering into a sacred space that allowed the emperor to be at his best. A well-rested emperor was a powerful ruler, one who could make decisions with wisdom and clarity. A restless emperor, on the other hand, was a sign that the empire itself was in disarray. This cycle of sleep, intervention, and renewal was essential to the emperor's role. It was more than just a personal need, it was a part of the emperor's divine mandate to rule with wisdom and balance. The emperor's sleep was his secret weapon, a time to recharge and reconnect with the forces that governed the world. But it was also a time when he could receive guidance and insight, both for his personal life and for his rule. The emperor's nightly rituals were, in many ways, a form of spiritual self-care, a necessary part of maintaining his connection to the heavens and the stability of the empire. And so, As the emperor rose each day, he did so not just as a man, but as a divine ruler, connected to the forces of the universe. His rest had restored him, both physically and spiritually, and he was ready to face the challenges of the day. His leadership was as much about his ability to rest and recharge as it was about his political and military acumen. In the end, the emperor's bedtime rituals were not just about personal comfort. They were about ensuring that he remained in harmony with the heavens, that he was spiritually balanced, and that he could lead the empire with wisdom and clarity. His sleep, far from being a trivial matter, was a crucial part of his role as the son of heaven. And with each night's rest, the empire was renewed, its power and prosperity restored through the emperor's connection to the divine. By now, we've explored the intricate rituals surrounding the emperor's sleep, the spiritual practices, and the ceremonial importance of his rest. But there's another side to this story that is just as captivating: the influence of these rituals on the court and the people. While the emperor's sleep was often viewed as a deeply personal, almost sacred experience, it also had a profound effect on the culture surrounding the imperial household and the wider empire. The emperor's health, rest, and spiritual alignment were so closely tied to the prosperity of the nation that the court followed his lead in many aspects of daily life. For example, certain courtiers, especially those who were closest to the emperor, would be expected to maintain their own forms of rest and spiritual practice. In fact, the emperor's closest attendants, his advisors, generals, and high-ranking officials would sometimes partake in similar rituals to ensure that they, too, were spiritually in tune with the emperor's needs. If an emperor had a particularly restless night or experienced a troubling dream, the courtiers might also take this as a sign of impending trouble. They would be quick to adjust their plans and strategies, sometimes even delaying important matters of state. If the emperor was unsettled, the court would follow suit and attempt to re-establish balance within their own circles. This dynamic between the emperor and the court created a ripple effect throughout the empire. The emperor's emotional and spiritual well-being wasn't just an isolated matter, it affected the entire realm. The emperor's sleep also had a direct impact on the people of the empire. It was said that when the emperor rested well and woke refreshed, the entire kingdom would thrive. A well-rested emperor was believed to make sound decisions, maintain peace, and lead the empire into prosperity. The opposite was also true. If the emperor's sleep was disturbed, it was thought to reflect on the empire's future. The people of China, deeply spiritual and superstitious, would look to their emperor for signs of divine favor. If their ruler's sleep was troubled, they might fear that bad fortune was coming. It's incredible to think about how these rituals and beliefs stretched beyond the palace walls. In many ways, the emperor's private life, his sleep, his dreams, his spiritual practices shaped the public perception of his rule. The emperor was not only the political leader of the empire, but also its spiritual anchor. His ability to rest and rejuvenate was seen as a reflection of his connection to the divine and his ability to guide the empire toward peace and prosperity. This cultural connection between the emperor's rest and the state's well-being extended even further. During times of crisis, when the emperor's sleep was disturbed by dreams of war, famine, or civil unrest, the entire nation could feel the weight of it. You can imagine how a restless emperor during a time of political turmoil would have an impact on the stability of the empire. It wasn't just about personal rest, it was about the national psyche, the collective sense of security or anxiety. The emperor's dreams were seen as omens, and those omens were believed to be directly connected to the emperor's ability to rule. At the same time, the emperor's bedtime rituals and his spiritual practices were seen as a means of protecting the empire from external threats. You might think of the emperor's sleep as a shield, a way of ensuring that he stayed connected to the heavens and that the empire was safeguarded from natural disasters, invasions, or civil unrest. When the emperor slept well, it was believed that the empire itself was protected, as if the balance between heaven and earth was being maintained through his restful state. This belief in the emperor's connection to the divine was more than just a spiritual concept, it was a political necessity. The emperor's role as the son of heaven wasn't just symbolic, it was a central part of his political legitimacy. His health and well-being were seen as an indicator of the empire's prosperity, and his ability to rest and rejuvenate was a sign that the heavens were pleased with his rule. For the people of China, the emperor's sleep was a reflection of the cosmic order, and any disturbance in his rest was a sign that the harmony of the empire was in jeopardy. The emperor's bedtime rituals were not just an expression of luxury or indulgence, they were a reflection of the cosmic balance that governed the empire. The emperor's sleep was, in many ways, a manifestation of the harmony between heaven and earth. If the emperor rested well, it was a sign that the empire was in good hands, spiritually aligned, and ready to face the challenges of the future. If the emperor's sleep was troubled, it was a sign that the balance had been disrupted and the empire would need to take action to restore it. As we continue to explore the emperor's relationship with sleep, it's important to recognize the spiritual, political, and cultural dimensions of this practice. The emperor's bedtime wasn't just about relaxation or personal comfort. It was a key part of his role as the ruler of one of the most powerful and ancient civilizations in the world. His ability to rest, to dream, and to connect with the divine was central to the strength and stability of the empire. Sleep, for the emperor, was much more than a private affair. It was a cosmic responsibility, one that shaped the fate of the entire empire. But it wasn't just the emperor who adhered to these bedtime rituals. Over time, these practices trickled down to the court and the people. The emperor's sleep became a model for the rest of society, a reminder that personal well-being, rest, and spiritual balance were essential to the prosperity of the nation. The emperor's sacred rest, then, was not just a personal privilege, it was a national duty, one that connected the emperor's private life to the spiritual and political life of the entire empire. We've now covered the spiritual, cultural, and political impact of the emperor's sleep, and how his nightly rituals weren't just personal, they were part of the cosmic and political fabric that held the empire together. But let's take a step back and think about how these rituals evolved over time and what they reveal about the changing role of the emperor. Was the emperor's connection to sleep and spirituality always viewed the same way, or did the rituals shift with changing dynasties and political landscapes? Throughout China's imperial history, the role of the emperor as a divine figure, a living link between heaven and earth, remained largely unchanged. However, the way the emperor approached sleep and spiritual practices did evolve over time, often reflecting the changing needs of the empire and the ruling dynasty. For example, during the early dynasties, the emperor's sleep rituals were closely tied to Taoism and Confucianism, which emphasized harmony with nature, balance in the body, and the alignment of personal conduct with cosmic forces. However, as the empire grew and evolved, so too did the spiritual and political environment surrounding the emperor's sleep. During the Tang dynasty, for instance, there was a greater influence of Buddhism, which introduced new practices surrounding meditation, prayer, and contemplation into the emperor's daily routine. These practices began to influence the emperor's sleep rituals, leading to an increased focus on inner peace, self-reflection, and spiritual enlightenment. The emperor's nightly rest became not only a time of physical restoration but also a time of spiritual awakening, where he could connect with the divine and meditate on the challenges ahead. As we move into the Song dynasty, the emperor's role as a spiritual figure became more closely tied to statecraft. During this period, the emperor's sleep was not just a matter of personal health, but was also seen as a way to ensure the stability of the empire. Political advisors and military strategists believed that the emperor's ability to sleep peacefully was directly linked to his ability to govern effectively. The emperor's sleep was no longer just about divine alignment, it was also about his ability to make clear decisions in times of crisis, maintain stability in the court, and safeguard the empire's future. But no matter how the emperor's sleep rituals evolved over time, one thing remained constant. The emperor's sleep was always seen as an essential part of his leadership. Regardless of the dynasty or political climate, the emperor's rest was viewed as a reflection of his ability to govern. If the emperor was well rested, it was thought that he would rule with wisdom, clarity, and strength. If he was unsettled or restless, it was seen as a sign that the empire itself was out of balance. This connection between the emperor's sleep and his governance is a fascinating one because it reveals how deeply interconnected the personal and the political were in imperial China. The emperor wasn't just a ruler, he was a divine figure, a symbol of cosmic order. His sleep, dreams, and spiritual practices were viewed as directly influencing the stability of the empire. It's almost as if the emperor's private life, the most personal, intimate part of his day, was inseparable from the public life of the empire. As we consider this dynamic, it's also important to recognize how the emperor's sleep rituals were not just for him, they were for the people of China. The emperor's well-being was considered essential to the health of the entire nation. If the emperor slept well, it was believed that the empire would thrive. If the emperor was restless, it was thought that the people would suffer. The emperor, in this sense, was not just a ruler but a spiritual leader whose state of mind and body affected the fate of the nation. But as time went on, the emperor's sleep rituals began to change. With the rise of Confucianism during the later dynasties, the focus of the emperor's rest shifted from purely spiritual practices to more practical and state-driven concerns. The emperor was still seen as a divine figure, but his rest became less about personal connection to the divine and more about maintaining political control. The emperor's well-being was tied to his ability to make decisions, manage the court, and oversee the empire's military and economic affairs. While spiritual rituals still played a role, the emperor's sleep habits became more integrated with the practical realities of ruling a vast and complex empire. This shift in focus also meant that the emperor's bedtime rituals became more standardized. Whereas earlier emperors had more individualized rituals, later emperors had set routines that were followed by the court. The emperor's servants and attendants were trained in these rituals, ensuring that each night was spent in rest, restoration, and spiritual alignment. However, as we've discussed before, this wasn't just a personal matter, it was an issue of statecraft. The emperor's sleep was still a reflection of his rule, his health, and the well-being of the empire itself. In the final analysis, the emperor's sleep was one of the most important rituals in the imperial court. It was not just about physical rest or spiritual renewal, it was about maintaining cosmic and political harmony. The emperor's ability to rest well, to reconnect with the divine during sleep, and to wake up ready to face the challenges of the day was central to his role as the ruler of China. It was a ritual that kept him connected to the heavens and ensured that his rule remained stable, prosperous, and just. In the next section, we'll explore how the emperor's sleep rituals influenced the broader cultural practices of the time and how they were reflected in the daily lives of the common people. For now, though, let's take a moment to reflect on just how complex and spiritual these rituals were. The emperor's sleep was so much more than just a personal luxury. It was a critical part of the emperor's role as the son of heaven and a key factor in the success of the entire empire. As we continue exploring the far-reaching impact of the emperor's sleep rituals, it becomes clear that these practices were not just confined to the emperor's private life. They were a reflection of broader cultural norms and expectations that permeated the entire empire. The emperor's sleep was, in many ways, a model for the common people. The way the emperor rested, the rituals he followed, and even the materials he used for sleep influenced societal practices in various ways. One of the most interesting aspects of the emperor's sleep rituals is how they mirrored the cultural values of ancient China. The importance of rest, rejuvenation, and spiritual alignment was a value shared not only by the emperor, but by all people in Chinese society. While the emperor's bedtime was marked by luxury and divine symbolism, commoners too believed in the necessity of rest for maintaining balance, health, and well-being. For example, even in the most humble of households, sleep was seen as an essential practice to maintain vitality and energy. Of course, the rituals surrounding sleep for the common people were not as elaborate as those in the emperor's court. Yet, the idea of aligning one's sleep with the natural world, whether through feng shui or through the use of herbal remedies, was widely practiced. In fact, many common Chinese people used similar techniques as those used by the emperor to ensure a good night's sleep. Herbal remedies made from local plants like ginseng, lotus seeds, and chrysanthemum were commonly used to promote calmness and relaxation. Just as the emperor's rest was seen as a way of maintaining cosmic harmony, the common people's rest was also viewed as a way of maintaining physical and spiritual balance. The influence of the emperor's sleep rituals extended to the design of homes and living spaces throughout China. Just as the emperor's bedchamber was carefully arranged with feng shui principles in mind, so too were the homes of commoners. The placement of furniture, the direction of the bed, and the use of certain colors and materials in the home were all believed to affect the quality of one's sleep. This connection between sleep and feng shui became an integral part of Chinese culture, and it was directly influenced by the imperial court's emphasis on the importance of sleep. While the common people's bedtime rituals may not have been as extravagant as the emperor's, the underlying belief in the power of sleep to influence well-being was universally understood. Just as the emperor's rest was thought to be a reflection of the state of the empire, So too was the quality of rest for the common people seen as a reflection of their personal health and spiritual alignment. In many ways, the emperor's sleep habits set the tone for the broader societal expectations surrounding rest, health, and balance. This connection between the emperor's personal rest and the broader cultural practices surrounding sleep also reveals how deeply interconnected the emperor was with the lives of his subjects. While the emperor may have lived in luxury, his actions and practices were deeply tied to the lives of the common people. The emperor's role as the son of heaven, with his spiritual and political responsibilities, was mirrored by the way the common people also viewed themselves in relation to the cosmos. Their daily practices, including sleep, were seen as ways of maintaining harmony with the natural world and the divine order. The emperor's sleep, then, was a microcosm of the larger spiritual and cultural landscape that influenced every facet of Chinese society. In fact, there are even records of commoners using the emperor's sleep habits as a form of spiritual guidance. For instance, during times of unrest or political turmoil, the emperor's health and sleep would be closely monitored by the people. If the emperor was reported to be sleeping well, it was taken as a sign that the nation was in balance. If the emperor was having restless nights, it was seen as a signal that change was needed. The common people, in a sense, looked to the emperor as a spiritual barometer for the state of the empire. If the emperor was at peace, so too were they. The connection between the emperor's sleep and the broader societal consciousness also influenced artistic expression. Throughout Chinese history, the emperor's sacred rest was depicted in various forms of art, including paintings, poetry, and even sculpture. These artistic representations often conveyed the idea that the emperor's sleep was not just a personal matter, but a cosmic event that resonated through the entire empire. For example, during the Tang dynasty, paintings of the emperor's bedroom and sleep rituals were often created to symbolize the emperor's connection to the divine. These artworks were meant to remind the people of the emperor's divine mandate and his role in maintaining balance and harmony in the empire. Poetry, too, was often used to reflect the emperor's sleep and its significance. Many poems from the Tang and Song dynasties emphasized the importance of rest as a means of maintaining one's spiritual health. These poems would sometimes describe the emperor's peaceful sleep as a symbol of the stability and prosperity of the empire. The emperor's rest was seen as a metaphor for the state of the nation. When the emperor rested well, the nation was at peace. When the emperor was troubled, the empire felt it. These poetic representations helped reinforce the cultural belief that the emperor's well-being was directly tied to the fate of the empire. In more practical terms, the emperor's sleep rituals also influenced the broader court culture. The emperor's attendants and officials would often follow similar rituals in their own lives, creating a culture of rest and spiritual mindfulness within the court. Courtiers and military leaders would take part in calming activities, such as meditation, prayer, and quiet reflection, to ensure that they were spiritually aligned with the emperor. In this way, the emperor's sleep practices became a model for the rest of the imperial court, reinforcing the idea that rest, relaxation, and spiritual alignment were not just personal choices, they were vital to the smooth operation of the empire. But as we have already seen, the emperor's sleep wasn't always uninterrupted. At times, the emperor's inability to sleep, or the disturbance of his dreams, was taken as a sign of greater unrest in the empire. This cycle of sleep, disturbance, and renewal became an important part of the emperor's leadership role. It wasn't just about personal comfort, it was about the larger spiritual and political health of the empire. In this way, the emperor's rest wasn't just an isolated event, it was a mirror of the empire's well-being. In the grand tapestry of Chinese imperial history, the emperor's sleep was a fundamental thread. It was tied to his connection with the heavens, his ability to rule with wisdom, and the prosperity of the empire. His sleep habits reflected the spiritual and political dynamics of the time, influencing everything from court culture to the lives of ordinary people. And so, as the emperor rested each night, the empire's fate rested with him. His sleep was not just about rejuvenation, it was a vital part of the ongoing story of China's imperial past. As we reflect on the emperor's sleep and its profound cultural significance, let's consider the long-term impact of these practices on Chinese society and the imperial legacy. The bedtime rituals of Chinese emperors may have evolved over time, but their underlying purpose remains steadfast, ensuring not only the emperor's personal well-being but also the health and stability of the empire. The emperor's sleep in essence, was a powerful symbol of his ability to rule, connecting him with divine forces, his ancestors, and the very fabric of the cosmos. Over centuries, the practices surrounding the emperor's sleep set a precedent for the spiritual and political integration of personal habits with the functioning of the state. As we move into later periods in Chinese history, such as the Ming and Qing dynasties, we can see how the concept of the emperor's sleep continued to influence both the royal court and the people. By the time of these later dynasties, the rituals had become more formalized and institutionalized, but they still retained their sacred and symbolic importance. The emperor was still the son of heaven, and his rest remained an essential part of his divine mandate. However, as China entered the modern age, the significance of the emperor's sleep began to shift. The fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912 marked the end of imperial rule, and with it, the era of the emperor as the central figure in both political and spiritual life. The abolition of the imperial system brought with it the rise of a republic, and with it, the dissolution of many of the practices and beliefs that had governed Chinese imperial life for thousands of years. Yet, even after the end of the imperial era, the cultural memory of the emperor's sleep rituals remained deeply ingrained in Chinese society. The idea that rest, sleep, and spiritual alignment were critical to good governance and personal well-being didn't vanish with the fall of the monarchy. Instead, these practices were adapted and integrated into the new order of the Republic and, later, modern China. The value placed on rest and personal health as a reflection of the stability of the nation continued to resonate in the cultural consciousness. Interestingly, the legacy of the emperor's sleep rituals can still be seen in the way the Chinese people view sleep today. In modern China, there remains a deep respect for the importance of rest, both for personal health and spiritual balance. While the emperor's nightly rituals may have been steeped in divine symbolism, the core belief that sleep is essential for maintaining physical and mental health remains a central aspect of Chinese culture. In this way, the emperor's legacy continues to shape societal views on sleep, rest, and rejuvenation. Even in the modern era, Chinese medicine continues to emphasize the importance of restful sleep, drawing from the same principles that guided the emperor's rest rituals. Herbal remedies, acupuncture, and other traditional practices aimed at improving sleep are still widely used throughout China today. In fact, many of the same herbs and techniques used to help the emperor sleep, such as ginseng, chrysanthemum, and lotus root, are still used by ordinary people in China as natural remedies for stress, insomnia, and anxiety. These practices, deeply rooted in the emperor's legacy, serve as a reminder of the profound connection between personal well-being and the health of the nation. Just as the emperor's sleep was a reflection of his ability to govern, so too does the health and rest of the individual reflect the well-being of the community. The emperor's sleep habits, therefore, were not only a private matter but a cultural and political symbol that influenced the way the Chinese viewed rest, spirituality, and leadership for generations. Moreover, the emperor's sleep rituals played a role in shaping the way people viewed hierarchy and authority. The emperor, as the son of heaven, was considered the ultimate authority in all matters, both spiritual and political. His sleep rituals were a way to reinforce this divine status, with every detail of his rest carefully planned and executed to ensure that he remained in a state of harmony with the universe. This reverence for the emperor's role in maintaining cosmic balance was reflected in the way the emperor was treated by his court and the people. For the common people, the emperor's sleep was more than just an example of luxury. It was a symbol of the divine connection that the emperor maintained with the heavens. As such, the emperor's nightly rest was not simply a matter of personal comfort, but a reflection of the celestial order. The emperor's ability to sleep well was seen as a sign of divine favor, and his rest was believed to be a source of strength for the entire nation. The emperor's sleep rituals also had a profound impact on Chinese art and culture. Paintings, poetry, and literature from various dynasties often depicted the emperor's bedchamber and his spiritual practices. These artistic representations served as a reminder of the emperor's divine mandate and the importance of sleep in maintaining the emperor's connection to the heavens. Some works of art depicted the emperor in a state of peaceful sleep, while others highlighted the rituals surrounding his rest, emphasizing the significance of these practices in maintaining the empire's stability. As we look back at the emperor's sleep rituals, it becomes clear that these practices were not just about rest. They were a symbol of the emperor's power, his divine connection, and his ability to govern the empire with wisdom and balance. The emperor's sleep was a reflection of the cosmic order, and the rituals surrounding his rest were designed to maintain that order, ensuring that the emperor remained in harmony with the divine forces that governed the world. In the modern age, as China continues to evolve, the spiritual and cultural significance of sleep, rest, and personal well-being remains deeply rooted in the collective consciousness. The emperor's sleep rituals, though no longer practiced in their original form, continue to influence Chinese society today, reminding the people that sleep, rest, and spiritual harmony are not just personal luxuries, but essential components of a healthy, prosperous nation. The legacy of the emperor's sleep rituals endures, shaping the way the Chinese people view rest, well-being, and leadership for generations to come. As we approach the final stretch of our journey into the imperial slumbers of the Chinese emperors, let's slow things down a bit and reflect on the deeper lessons we can learn from the fascinating connection between the emperor's sleep and his leadership. The emperor's bedtime rituals weren't just a personal luxury or a divine privilege. They were a critical part of his ability to rule, maintain harmony, and ensure the prosperity of the empire. His sleep rituals were a blend of practical, spiritual, and political practices that allowed him to connect with the divine, stay aligned with the cosmic forces, and prepare for the challenges that came with ruling an empire. But beyond the lavish bedding, the incense, and the herbal remedies, the emperor's sleep rituals remind us of a profound truth. Rest is not just a break from the world. It's a necessary part of maintaining balance both within ourselves and in the world around us. Just as the emperor's sleep was vital for his ability to rule effectively, our own rest is crucial to our ability to navigate the challenges of life. The emperor's ability to rest and rejuvenate was a cornerstone of his reign, allowing him to wake up each day ready to make important decisions, face challenges, and ensure the prosperity of the empire. In many ways, the emperor's sleep was a reflection of the larger cosmic balance that governed the world. The emperor was, after all, the son of heaven, and his rest was part of the ongoing relationship between the divine and the earthly. When the emperor slept peacefully, it was a sign that the heavens were pleased with his rule and that cosmic harmony had been maintained. But when the emperor's sleep was disturbed, it was a sign that something was out of balance and that the empire itself was in danger of falling into chaos. The emperor's sleep, then, wasn't just a private matter. It was a reflection of the state of the entire nation. This idea that rest is a reflection of balance extends far beyond the emperor. It's a concept that resonates with us all. Whether we are leaders, workers, or students, our ability to rest, recharge, and reflect is crucial for maintaining balance in our own lives. Just as the emperor had to maintain harmony with the universe in order to lead effectively, we too must find ways to maintain harmony within ourselves. Sleep is not just a time to disconnect from the world, it's a time to reconnect with our inner selves, to restore our energies, and to prepare for the challenges that lie ahead. In this way, the emperor's sleep rituals serve as a powerful reminder of the importance of rest, not just for the sake of physical health, but for spiritual and emotional well-being as well. The emperor's ability to sleep deeply and peacefully was directly tied to his spiritual connection with the heavens and his ability to govern with wisdom. Our own sleep habits, while not as grand, can similarly influence our spiritual, emotional, and mental clarity. Just as the emperor needed a proper environment for sleep to connect with the divine, we too need an environment of peace and quiet to connect with ourselves and the world around us. As we wrap up this exploration into the sleep rituals of Chinese emperors, it's clear that these practices were more than just a matter of luxury. They were deeply tied to the health and well-being of the emperor, the court, and the empire itself. The emperor's sleep was a reflection of his ability to rule, and in many ways, it was the key to the stability and prosperity of China. While the emperor's rituals may seem distant from our modern lives, they offer valuable insights into the importance of rest, balance, and spiritual alignment in our own lives. Now, as you lay back, thinking about the emperor's nightly rest and all that it symbolized, let's take a moment to think about our own rest. Just as the emperor needed peace and rejuvenation to rule with wisdom, we too need our own moments of rest to face the challenges of the day. Sleep is not just a luxury, it's a necessity, one that can bring balance and clarity into our lives. So, next time you prepare to rest, remember the emperor. Take a moment to restore your balance, both physically and spiritually, and wake up ready to face whatever lies ahead. And as we leave the world of the emperors behind, let this final thought linger. Rest, like leadership, is a reflection of balance. It's through rest that we recharge, reconnect, and renew our sense of purpose. Just as the emperor's sleep was tied to the harmony of his empire, our own rest is tied to the harmony of our own lives. So take a deep breath, close your eyes, and allow yourself to find that peace just as the emperor did, night after night.